Welcome back to AFA Today on AFR Talk. Kevin McCullough, glad to be with you. This breaking headline, Alec Baldwin has been fired from MSNBC, mostly because he can't keep his temper under control. Not to be confused with my business partner, Stephen Baldwin, the nice Baldwin. We still do a lot of things together. But, Alec no longer on the air with MSNBC over his use of gay slurs to express his anger at reporters. Also, this piece of breaking news, it's a big news day. The Supreme Court is going to take another crack at Obamacare, specifically this time as it relates to the abortion and birth control mandates that so many people have said violate their religious conscience and the practice of their own faith in their own life. So we'll be watching that, as you know, here on AFR and AFA Today very, very closely. Kevin McCullough, very glad to have you with us. We are reliving a conversation I had just prior to showtime with Brooke Goldstein of the Lawfare Project, and she is breaking down for us the issue of Iran, what we got out of the deal, and in the last segment we heard quite clearly from her constitutional attorney's eyes, who has taken a look at this, we got nothing. We got nothing. The Western world got nothing. There is no accountability for Iran. And as I brought up, they can not even go along with the suspension of the activity, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And yesterday we turned on a spigot of $8 billion for them. So they're $8 billion richer. They get to keep enriching uranium. There's no accountability to them. And I was interested in some of the other elements of what had gone into the promise of these negotiations and why it mattered. And that's where we pick up the conversation with Brooke Goldstein of the Lawfare Project here on AFA Today and AFR Talk. Brooke, I want to ask you about the religious freedoms issue. There was a personal assurance, if you will, that was given from John Kerry and President Obama to the Abedini family here in the U.S. Pastor Saeed Abedini has been wrongfully imprisoned in Iran for a number of months. He's been denied medical treatment for internal bleeding that he has. When the president suggested that Iran take a look at returning him as an American citizen in September, he was transferred from a rat hole prison already to a complete death row, total abuse factory where he is now residing. This assurance was given by the president and by the Secretary of State to the family that his release would be part of the conditional discussions that they would engage with the Iranians over the weekend. They, according to those that were in attendance, it did not come up. The Abedini family has been put out. Brooke, it's not just a matter that he betrayed our allies, Israel. It's not just a matter that he betrayed his ambassador in Benghazi. He's now betraying American citizens that are wrongfully imprisoned in a terrorist state. Your reaction?
Well, you were talking about what we've legitimized. We've legitimized, again, the hostage-taking and holding and torture of American citizens, and President Obama has sent the signal that he just doesn't care. He will lie to Americans saying that he's going to raise it, and as you mentioned, it wasn't even brought up. The total disregard for the life of an American citizen whose job it is for the President of the United States to protect. I have no words to describe how disappointing it was. It would have been so easy to request the release of this pastor who was wrongfully imprisoned. Obama has shown that he has zero bargaining power with Iran. It makes us look incredibly weak. The other thing I wanted to mention that we've legitimized is an unprecedented amount of leaks on an American ally. Over the past year or so, the Americans have leaked classified information that has been shared with them by the State of Israel, our number one greatest ally in the Middle East, and have destroyed and attempted to destroy the capability of Israel to protect its own civilians and do what it thinks is necessary in terms of a preemptive strike or whatever to neutralize Iran's capability to engage in mass genocide. And the United States government has leaked and leaked over and over again, and it totally unprecedented rate in the history of the United States administration's classified information of our ally. I mean, is there any accountability whatsoever on this Obama administration? It doesn't seem so. There is scandal after scandal that replaces the prior scandal as the headline. There's no accountability with Benghazi. There was no accountability with Fast and Furious. There's no accountability with Obamacare. There's no accountability that he broke his promises to the Abedin family. And now it looks as though there's absolutely no accountability when it comes to his failed foreign policy and the absence of any type of intelligent diplomacy vis-a-vis Iran.
Okay, but Brooke, you're a smart constitutional attorney, and you study the law and you observe how the law is being used as weapons of warfare. That is the definition of lawfare, and it is what the lawfareproject.org is all about. Let me ask you to react to this statement from Mr. Obama as quoted this morning in the New York Times. He says, "We are testing diplomacy. We're not resorting immediately to military conflict." He said, "Tough talk and bluster may be the easy thing to do politically, but it's not the right thing for our security." Now, regardless of all the other stuff that we've mentioned, there is something in this statement to me that jumps out, and that is that Mr. Obama seems to equate military conflict as being something that should not even be considered on the table. In other words, he's saying that if he says we're going to hold you accountable even militarily, that it's only tough talk and bluster.
Exactly. He basically just admitted that. I mean, let's go back to his whole red line statement on Syria. He just admitted in that statement that he's not going to follow through with any of his threats to engage the United States military. Obviously, a military option is the last resort. Violence should always be the last resort. But it's not up to us when somebody declares war time and time again on the West, when someone is actively funding terrorism, when American citizens are being slaughtered around the world by Iranian agents, Hezbollah and Hamas. The President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, has a duty to do everything that he can to protect American lives. It is not his job to test diplomacy. Frankly, if you are the President of the United States and you are your second term and you're still engaged in testing diplomacy, then you should be fired.
What does Israel do in light of this?
You know, I hate to always talk about the Iranian issue in an Israeli-centric paradigm because it is not Israel. It is not only Israel's problem. The imminent threat of a nuclear-armed Iran, the imminent threat of Iran, period, even without nukes. As I mentioned, the number one state sponsor of terrorism is not just Israel's problem. And what's happened is because Israel is the only country to speak publicly and openly about the threat and to say it's going to do something, that the world has conveniently said, okay, well, we're just going to let the Jewish state take care of it. Well, shame on the world for pushing its responsibility on the tiny state of Israel to defend not only itself, but humanity from the greatest threat to Western civilization, which is what Iran represents today.
But you will admit, Brooke, that the U.S. has made it difficult for Israel because we've asked them to be handcuffed time and time again. And it appears now that, kind of not in keeping with recent presidencies, that Benjamin Netanyahu may say, we will take action. We're going to have to take action because we're the closest ones to them. We're the biggest target with the easiest access that their weapons have to capabilities for.
You know, some have argued and written about one of the sole purposes of this so-called agreement, and it's not an agreement because it's completely one-sided, was to merely not only just, give Iran more time to become richer, but also to delegitimize any attack that would take place by Israel or by Israel in coordination with the Arab nations, which is looking likely because, there's a great, I was talking with my friend Mark Dubowitz at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he said that we have, a historic opportunity right now for Israel to work with France and to work with the Arab nations and come to a peace accord, given that they all have an interest, a shared interest in containing Iran. That's one silver lining. But going back to what Israel is going to do and how these negotiations, this so-called agreement, has basically operated to delegitimize any strike that Israel or the Arab nations working in coordination with Israel would do. American officials have actually come out and said if Israel does launch a strike, that U.S. planes would be ordered to shoot Israeli planes down. Can you imagine if the United States made a similar comment about any of our other allies? If Britain or France or Germany decided that it had to take military action to defend its own citizens, the United States is going to shoot those planes down? I mean, the contempt that this administration has shown Israel, it's not any secret. And Israel acting in defense not only of its own civilians, but in defense of the Western world in its entirety, to show that type of contempt, to speak so openly that you're going to shoot down the planes of an ally. Again, this is unprecedented.
Our best
this is
ally.
Not diplomacy. This is amateur hour.
All right. Well, the lawfareproject.org, Brooke's group, is on top of this stuff like no one else. But I want you to take a couple of seconds here, Brooke, and tell us about Camp Jihad, this short film that's housed on the homepage of thelawfareproject.org.
Well, what we've done is we co-produced with the Center for Near East Policy a short documentary film called Camp Jihad. You can view it on our website, thelawfareproject.org. Lawfare is spelled L-A-W-F as in Frank, A-R-E, thelawfareproject.org. The film goes into UNRWA schools. UNRWA is the United Nations Relief Works Agency. It is the arm of the United Nations that is tasked with providing aid and education to the Palestinian refugees. UNRWA has been operating schools, teaching from textbooks provided by the Palestinian Authority, funded by the U.S. government, that legitimize suicidal, homicidal violence, that teach innocent Palestinian children to become suicide bombers, to put themselves in the line of fire, and that the greatest thing that they should aspire to become is the suicide bomber, is to achieve martyrdom. This is not only a violation of these children's rights, a most egregious form of child abuse. It is also a violation of U.S. law and a violation of international law. And yet the United States continues to provide funding to UNRWA unconditionally. And our taxpayer dollars are basically going towards aiding and abetting the premeditated murder of Palestinian children by teaching them to kill themselves as suicide bombers. It is a disgrace. So we went in and we filmed so that people, the American public, can see for themselves what kind of lessons are being taught in UNRWA schools funded by the U.S. government. And recently our film was presented by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry to show him what the real root cause of terrorism is, and to show him and make the point that peace will not be possible if Palestinian children continue to be taught to kill themselves for the sake of jihad. Wow. And to demonize not just Jews but Christians and all other infidels. And just recently, 4 members of Congress wrote a letter referencing our film to Secretary Kerry, demanding that he answer their various questions and show that there is some accountability. Canada, which is where I was born, recently divested from UNRWA for this very reason, and yet our taxpayer dollars continue to flow unconditionally to this UN agency, and it's a shame.
All right. Friends, you need to go see that. And by the way, they've got a very handy email link at the top of that film's post. You can send this to your friends, and I would encourage you to do that. It's thelawfareproject.org. She is Brooke Goldstein, and she is keeping her eye on the stuff that most of the media is ignoring, and that's why we are so honored to have her here. Brooke, thank you for your diligence, and thank you for your vigilance in keeping the American people informed and hopefully safe because of your efforts.
Kevin, thank you so much for paying attention to these issues. It is a privilege and an honor to be on your show.
Well, we are grateful for her time. It's Kevin McCullough now back live. in the studio at AFA today, and what you've just heard is a pre-taped discussion that she just wasn't able to join us live today for the show, but we were able to get that conversation on tape just before the show. And the reason that I felt it was so important is this: we're going into the holiday weekend. This Iran deal is going to be largely forgotten by the press. They are going to forget about it and all the damage that it has done. And I felt it was important that you hear someone with a constitutional attorney's credentials break this thing down and really tear it apart for what it means bit by bit. And that's what the Lawfare Project is really good at. They study these issues of how the law is used, treaties that are entered into, agreements that are made, et cetera, how the law is used as a weapon of warfare, particularly from the most radical, terrorist-oriented portions of the universe, and how it affects your basic human rights, your basic constitutional rights every single day here in America. Kevin McCullough, so glad to be with you, and just know that we're still on top of the breaking news. If you didn't hear it at the top of the hour, the Supreme Court has decided to at least one more time take a crack at Obamacare. This time they have announced that they will take up the case as it pertains to the mandates included in the law. Now, is it wrong to hope and pray that they right a wrong from previous? Certainly. The rollout of the plan can't be helping the case of the law, and when you see the unconstitutional ways that people are being forced to exercise and participate in commerce, I just don't know how they come to a decision that it's constitutional, but we'll follow it, and we'll make sure that we're on top of it for you. I'm Kevin McCullough. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for telling your friends every day. AFA Today on AFR Talk, online at afatoday.com. Kevin McCullough saying we'll see you later.